Hey friends, so welcome back to DBC Inc. Live. We are streaming on Facebook and also on YouTube. So please do put over in the comments who you are, where you're watching, what you do. Tell us a little bit about you, maybe something exciting that happened today. And we'll get started sharing a little bit about the show and our special guest today, which you can see him already. We'll let him chat in just a moment. But remember, all of these comments over in the comment section enter you to win a free book of George's. You get to choose. He has 2 books, so you get to choose which one you want. And yeah, we'll leave these comments open all the way until 8 a.m. Friday morning. So if you're putting babies to bed, fear not, you can still comment on the show afterward during the playback and be entered to win the free book. So please do tell us who you are, where you're listening from, what you do, and tell us a little bit about your day today. And while we are doing that, George is on the show. We're so excited to have him. Super honored to have him. I know it's a busy night. You have babies at home, George, but tell us a little bit about you, what you're doing right now, and how this dad life is going.
Hey, my name is George Couros. I actually see somebody from Craig Fullerton from Red Deer, which is actually just probably about 55 minutes from where I live right now. So kind of small world that you have the Alberta connection already. And so I see Debbie and Dave joining as well. So yeah, my name is George Couros. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. As you can see, I'm the author of The Innovator's Mindset and co-author of Innovate Outside the Box with the awesome Katie Novak. And yeah, I trained to become a kindergarten teacher, and as I've shared before, as literally the only grade I've never taught. I taught grade 1 to 12, was a vice principal, worked in central office, and now I just get the opportunity to travel. Well, I did get the opportunity to travel. Yeah, but I've been working from home and working with schools all over. But yeah, we have 2 daughters, and George and Clea, and one of the blessings that we have is that, during this time, 2020, which is, I know a lot of people are going to look back on this year really horribly, and totally understandably so. But I look at it really special because that was the year my daughter, Georgia, was born. And I feel a little bit blessed that I was able to be home and spend that time. So yeah, I have 2 daughters that I love tremendously. And so it's, yeah, I love kind of going back and forth between the role of dad and educator and kind of the intersection of those 2 things.
So cool. And I love seeing the pictures of them too. I double like all of those. And if you don't already know this, I think I'm going to tell this little story just before George gets started sharing some inspiration with us. But George is actually the godfather that got me connected on internet. I literally went to this conference and I heard him speak in a keynote, and immediately went to his session about Twitter. Had no idea really what Twitter was all about. I had an account and I had a name with a bunch of numbers behind it. I didn't know what to do with it. The only person I followed was Adam Levine. And I remember George just making me so embarrassed in his session because he was like, what? Why are you not following people? You need to get connected. And he basically told us, I think you told us, if you are not on Twitter and you're an educator, what are you doing? It's 21st century. And so, yeah, that's how it all started. And not long after that, Book Snaps was birthed. And that's when I tweeted out about Dave's book and connected with Dave. And boom, who knew I would be working for Dave Burgess Consulting a little later. But George, it kind of all started with you, honestly.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that, because I know there's a lot of people that, I got them blogging and things like that too. And I think for me, I think that's a really important aspect of the work that I do, because I really want to encourage people to share their voice and connect with others. And I know that I get the opportunity to connect with so many educators that are really inspiring, and I feel blessed, but I also feel there's a lost opportunity when I get to see them, but other people don't. And so that's why I really encourage them to kind of get their voice out there and share. So really, I did that, the super easy part. I guilted you into sharing, and then you did the hard work of actually setting up your blog and setting up your account and things like that. So I get a lot of credit for, the easy part, which is okay with me. I'll take it.
No, it's awesome. And you helped me set up a whole entire website too. I remember that. It's It was like, you literally are my godfather when it comes to all things connected educator. So I'm really grateful for you, honestly. I write about George in my book too. So if you haven't read it, then you'll probably see that there if you read it. But George, we really had you on the show. We know you are author of 2 incredible books. One of my first books to read from DBC Inc. was The Innovator's Mindset. And it just changed the way I thought about things. I thought I had a growth mindset. And then I'm like, whoa, I need an innovator's mindset. And so I got to get to the next level. Like, where am I? And then you put out this incredible book, Innovate Inside the Box with Katie Novak. And we are just so honored to have you on the show. We'd love for you just to encourage us. Tell us something you've been thinking about. Share anything. We have lots of people over here in the comments. Be sure, if you're in the comments, if you're not in the comments and you're watching, put your name over there. Say something about what George is saying, because all those comments will enter you to win a free book. So George, take it away.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Innovator's Mindset, when I first wrote it, it's not like either or, because I think a lot of people connect like, hey, it's either growth mindset, it's either Innovator's Mindset. But from the work that I saw, I just feel like this is an extension, a build on it, because the easiest way I can actually connect this idea is just thinking of, I don't want kids just to be good at math. I want kids to be able to do something with the math they've learned, which I think it actually takes it to a whole different level. And, I get teased by the concepts and stuff like that too. But I actually also have been thinking about a lot of things have changed in my life and the work that I do. And if I didn't actually kind of embody that mindset, I would have been kind of stuck. And really is like, hey, so what are the opportunities here? And Debbie, I appreciate that comment. Thanks for sharing that. And so I kind of looked at, what's the stuff that I know? How could I actually help people in this time? And I think it's one of the things that we have to understand is that we have access to so much information right now. And what actually separates many people is like what they actually do with that information when you can Google things and separate it. So I think it's really important. And like, there's also this idea of basically like, like if you can just Google it, you don't need to ask, no basic knowledge. And I actually don't believe that at all. I think, basic knowledge, I know this is going to sound weird because I'm like kind of known for innovation. I actually want my daughters to learn the times tables. I want them to know how to spell. I want them to know basic facts. But I think it's at the time when we went to school, it was like basic facts were, basically how we were measured. And the way that I actually look at this is like, it's just now that we have access to this all the time, we should still know this, but what do we do to go beyond it? What do we do to kind of connect and share? So I think that's kind of the whole premise of the Innovator's Mindset. And then when we talked about Innovate Into the Box, it's really kind of taking that extension, showing really, ways that we can connect in meaningful ways, embodying that mindset, but how can we work it within the constraints that we have to work within school? And when Katie and I wrote it, we really kind of try to just talk about, there are constraints and we need to continuously push that. And Katie really said it best. She said, but this year for that grade 3 kid, this is it. This is their only grade 3 year. How do we do everything in our power to make sure that's like the most amazing year possible? And especially thinking about 2020, the last school year, really thinking about no matter what, how good or bad the year is, every kid is going to remember this year in our schools. So what can we do in our power to make this the most positive experience possible? And I know that's really hard. And I've been working with so many educators that have been doing so many great things with their kids, with their colleagues. And so it's just, it's been really inspiring to see, because I share the ideas, but my hope is honestly that people actually don't just take what I say and replicate it, but actually create something new with it, which is kind of the embodiment. If I could tell you step by step, here's how to be innovative, probably not that innovative. If that makes sense. Yeah.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think that's exactly when I read Innovator's Mindset the first time. Like I said, I always could think big, but when it came to actually doing, I feel like that was the big push that I got after the book. Is just, okay, now what are you going to do with it? Because I think so many times, especially the beginning of the year like this, a lot of people are setting these big goals for themselves and they can think big. We think big, we dream big, and that's fantastic. I mean, you're thinking positive, you're thinking beyond limits. But then when it comes to putting things in action and actually doing something with it, I think sometimes people meet roadblocks and they face these obstacles and they stop, and that was one of the things I felt like Innovators Mindset really just did for me. It just was like, if you embody this mindset, then that's not an option for you to just stop. That's just an iteration. That's just a step. That's just a move forward. And it really, honestly, it just changed the way I thought, because I really did think like I'm a big thinker, but now I'm like, I'm a doer. Like I'm not just a thinker. And I think that's really what Innovate Inside the Box is all about. Yeah, we have these constraints, we have these limits, but what are you going to do about it? Because for some of these kids, like it's your only chance with this one kid, so.
Yeah. And I appreciate you share that. And I think for what that solution is different for everybody. Like I actually would say probably when I met you, I'm like, you need to be on Twitter. It's like a place to be. I actually don't necessarily think that anymore. And I think we have that evolution. And part of it is that I don't think Twitter is necessarily the place for everyone to be. For some people, it's awesome. It's great. It's a great way to learn. But, some places people connect on Instagram. Some people connect on, through Facebook, or, maybe some people connect through MySpace. Who knows? I don't know. But really, it's actually just taking advantage that you have some place to connect that you didn't have when I first started teaching. But we tend to go to, and this is one of the things that, I'm really trying to be thoughtful of, is that people come to these sessions, people watch this information, or, they consume this information, but then what do they actually go do with it? What do they create with it? And I think that to me is something that's really important. So like a lot of times when I watch something like this, I'll like write down a blog, I'll create something with it. And it helps me actually connect like my experience, my knowledge to the content, which actually makes it more solidified in my mind. And I think that's where that connection is. And it's one of the reasons that, and one of the shifts I'm seeing in professional learning, I think is really powerful is, a lot of schools are doing like Zoom all day and whatever. And I don't like, that's what their situation is, but they're much more cognizant of like, hey, people can't be on Zoom all day. This is like, we need to give longer breaks. We need to like extend this time. And I've been advocating for years that when we do in-person events, that actually we need to like not have keynote, then 5-minute break to pee, and then go to the next session, and then just like fill teachers' time, because if they're not constantly doing sessions, then we're wasting a day. Because I actually think a lot of people, the best learning that they do at any event, any learning, or is actually that time in between. It's talking about these ideas. It's kind of thinking like, okay, how does this apply to my classroom? But we don't even give people time like this. So what I've seen in these virtual spaces is people are actually creating, these little time. And one of the things I've done to kind of mess with administrators on this, because it's like they struggle with seeing a 30-minute break. And not all, obviously, but some. So I say, it's not a break, it's connection and reflection time. And now it seems valuable, right? Because I've just changed the terminology with it. Because if it's a break, but I think that's a really important aspect, is trying to, like, we say we want people to create, to actually do something with this information, but then we just constantly bombard them with more and more information that they don't have time to do that. And I think part of that is, now that if you create experiences where educators have that and they go through that process, then we start saying like, hey, is 5 minutes between high school classes the best idea, or is there better ways we could utilize this? Because you want people to experience that. But and that's one of the things I've seen is kind of shifting with these virtual PD, because I think a lot of people just cannot handle being in front of a screen for that long. But like, are we utilizing that time to actually create something with it and, connect our knowledge? And I think that's, for me, is really powerful. And you can see like Debbie Tannenbaum, and Debbie, thanks for your kind words saying, best learning in the hallways. And I think a lot of people say that often, is like, hey, I'll say, well, what was the best part of the conference? Oh, just the conversations that I had with my friends. But a lot of times they're having that because they're skipping a session, right? I say like, we need to just make that as part of the work that we do.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I also think in the classroom, it's the same way. Of course, we need to provide these opportunities for our educators, and hopefully they feel that and they notice like, wow, our best learning it really is in the hallways, or it really was in this big chunk of connection time where we could take what we've learned and share how we would apply that. Are we allowing that for our students as well in the classroom?
Totally. Yeah. And actually, like, I don't know. You asked me if I could share a strategy, and I don't know
Go
if
for it.
well, one of the things that I've been doing, and it's good, and just it's so cool to see all these people here tonight, sharing, and I'll like share some content, and like one of the disconnects here is that like I don't think content's valuable because it's all about innovation and creating stuff like that. Well, actually, content is really important, and it's that connection to the work that we do. And I think it's John Medina. He wrote the book Brain Rules. He said this, and I thought it was the most powerful analogy. He said, creation without consumption is the equivalent of playing the air guitar. You might actually know the motions, but you don't know how to actually play. And so I thought that like that really connects with me, is that it's not like an either or. And I think we're in education, we have a lot of time. We go to like total opposite sides. Like, hey, it was all about competition when I was a kid. Now it's like super collaboration. I'm like, look, I need some time on my own to just think about stuff. Like I need some time working on my own to be able to actually meaningfully share ideas. But one of the things that I do when I'm doing sessions and connecting with people, I'll share some information, and then I just use like a simple Google form. It's like a really simple idea. And I just ask them like, hey, what's one question you have for me? Or what's like one thing that challenged you today? What's one thing you want to try moving forward? And just other comments, right? And then people will go take their break, and I'll give them like a good chunk of time. And what I'll actually do is I'll look on that Google form, as they come back, I'll actually look at what their questions are, what they shared. And it's a really simple way to kind of collect that and get that information. But then when I come back, I'll actually totally revamp everything I'm doing based on the questions that to the people in front of me. And part of the reason I do that is because like honestly, then if the experience is bad, it's not my fault anymore. It's based on the questions. So so I'm giving exactly what people are asking for. Like I'm trying to accommodate the people in front of me, as opposed to like I want to know what they want to learn. I don't want them to go from what I want to teach them. And I think it's kind of finding that balance. But that strategy that I've used to kind of reshape my workshops on the fly with people is something that I encourage people to do with their students, right? Like sharing some ideas and then actually giving students time to process and think about like what questions they have, and then actually starting from that point. Because I think if you start from the point of people's questions, it makes the content much more valuable. So it's something that I've been doing for a while, and it's been working great with especially with these workshops. And the break where people are having conversations, I'm going through what they're sharing to learn about them, and maybe, hey, here's something I don't agree with you on, and it's like, hey, let's talk about this, right? I think that's a really good part for me.
I love that too. And I love that it's in the middle. It's not like, I feel like a lot of times, George, people will do that at the end. It's like a reflection, like fill out the Google form and let me know. But then you never see that group of people again, right? It's a whole new group of people. And the same in the classroom. I mean, the way the kids are feeling in the middle of something that you're learning could be way different than at the end. And why don't we just adjust it right on the fly? That just seems so much more relatable and makes the content so much more relevant for them right then. So I really appreciate that. And it's an easy thing to implement, I think, even virtually, because you could put that Google link over in the comment section, so people don't feel awkward to put their questions over in the comment section. Just put the Google form over there, let them fill it out while they're on their little break. And when they come back, you've already change things up virtually. If you're a teacher and you can or an admin and you're leading a staff meeting or a PD, you can just change it up a little bit and make it more relevant to them.
Yeah. And that's like I think what's a really good point that you made is part of that process is like it's kind of when we think about like in-person sessions, right? When we'll say like, hey, does anyone like what questions do you have, right? And we'll ask that to the group. But a lot of times, only a few people. And if you're in the same school or same school district, you can say, oh, that person's going to ask a question because they ask a question every single time, right? And some people are just more comfortable sharing out loud and sharing. And it's not that, it's just they might have different processing time. And so that process actually allows other people to have a voice in a way that honors them, so that, maybe they don't want to actually talk out loud and they need that processing. And one of the strategies I talk about actually in Innovate Inside the Box is the idea of brain writing. So most educators know the concept of brainstorming, right? So we'll like talk about a concept and say, hey, brainstorm your ideas. But typically when we do that, it's kind of the same people, sharing their ideas and sharing their thoughts. And then they start to overtake the conversation. But some people need more processing time. And so actually having them walk away, kind of go on their own, and then jot down their thoughts in that space, and then bringing them back to the group actually helps them to kind of evolve. Like I'll tell you straight up, like I have very fast processing time, but it doesn't mean that my answers are any good. So even people with, can give you a quick answer. It's always better if you have time to kind of think about it. And so it's kind of just thinking about like, not only is this, helping me share based on what the group is in front of me, but it's also giving voice to people who might not feel comfortable sharing openly. And like one of the things I do is I ask people their name, but I make that optional, right? If you don't want to put your name to it, but you want to share an idea, then yeah, it's a good way to kind of connect. So I think for me, that's been really helpful, because that to me is like, I know my content really well. And I think that's a really important concept. And because I know it so well, then I can start doing stuff on the fly. Then I can start answering and tailoring the sessions to the people in front of me, which, a lot of teachers, they know their content really well. But if they create a space where they can move backwards to teach that content through student questions, there's a real power to that.
Totally. And plus it keeps it from being so boring, right? I feel like it would just be, that would be eye-opening. And also I feel like I was reading Tech with Heart not too long ago from Stacey Roshan, and she talks a lot about how the loudest person in the room is not necessarily smartest. That they could be, but she was super shy and introverted in high school, and she just talks about how she would get severe anxiety, but she had great answers. She just couldn't say them out loud like that. So knowing that they can ask these questions and it could be anonymous, they actually don't have to put their name to it. I think for some of our even adult learners, that would make them feel more safe and more valued. And that, I feel like Innovate Inside the Box is really all about that, giving so many opportunities for everyone to be able to share their learning.
Yeah, and I'm reading some of the comments while you're sharing too, and I think this comment from Amy Toulouse Parks, and I apologize, Amy, if I'm saying your name wrong. She shared that it's like a lot of the structures that we do at school don't actually give kids time to reflect, and there's a big issue with that I have. And so one of the reasons that I actually try to embed that time into staff professional learning is because I want people, and that includes the administrators, to see the value of it. Because once they start seeing the value of it, then they're more likely to create a schedule that's conducive to it, right? If you think about, you think about how school looked like when I was a kid, and like basically school was the space where you got information. Like we didn't use the internet. I didn't even know if it existed. Like I remember typing in where they'd say the letters, and that was our typing program, was our teacher telling us what letters to press. And you think about, that's a totally different structure. And of course, that's the easiest way to get a bunch of information in a short amount of time. But now we have all the information in the world, but we're still trying to work within the same structures. And I think part of it, that's the kind of concept of Innovate Into the Box, is like, what opportunities do we have? And Amy, when you shared that, it actually reminded me one of the things I talked about. I actually can't remember if I talked about this, I think it was Innovators Mindset. A school it was in Norway that I went to visit. They were writing a book in their English class as a class. It was amazing. And I came in there and I saw a teacher, and just kind of the structure of the classroom was really interesting because they had like, a big space for all the kids to work, but then they had like these little side offices. And so you see kids working in those spaces. They're all connected in glass. You can see the kids. And then you see the teacher working with a group of kids in another room. And it was really interesting. And I talked to them and I said, like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you doing this within like a time frame? And like, what does that look like? And she's like, well, we don't actually like teach like 1 hour, 90-minute classes. We actually have full day English with our kids, right? So what they would do is they have like an English class, and the same kids would be on English or at their English class on Monday for the entire day. And the only thing they taught every single day to kids was phys ed. That was it. The importance of daily physical activity. And then a group of kids would have math on Tuesday, right? A group of kids have science on Wednesday. And so they said, like, we can do so much more with having a full day with these kids to like really dig deep and really have an understanding. I'm like, but how do you do that? And like, how did you structure that? And they said, well, the country of Norway says we have to have X amount of instructional minutes in a school, like in a year teaching English. But they didn't say we have to teach it 5 days a week. They just said we have to have this. So why not actually just, do a full day workshop? And so the first thing I asked, and because I pictured math, as my high school experience, I'm like, there's no way they're going to do math that way. That was the first thing I thought. Cause I like basically my math was like, hey, teacher's going to talk for like 45 minutes. We're going to get 50 minutes to do practice or whatever. And then, repeat every single day. So that's kind of my thinking of math. And I said, how are the math teachers? Like, what did they think of this? They said, well, the math teachers were not happy. They were not happy about the switch. And now the same math teachers will not leave our school. They cannot go back to that structure, because when you think of like what a whole day with the same kids teaching math, it changes the way that you teach math, right? Because you're not limited, because you're not going to lecture for 45 minutes to the same group 6 times a day, given 50 minutes. You're going to have to rethink how you teach math. But it's still actually, within the constraints that was set out by the curriculum minutes in Norway, they still did it. And I think we have to start kind of thinking like, hey, like there are some structures that, of course, the government or whatever says we have to work within, but why do we have to do it this way? So it was just kind of interesting to see that. I think that's really where I started kind of getting that idea of innovate inside the box, when I saw that in Norway, when I was there visiting and speaking at their school. So it was neat to see.
So cool. So cool. I love that idea too. And I think the more we can think like that, the more that we can broaden our vision and be able to see, it is just minutes. Ours is written in just minutes too here in Lawrence. Like that's how it's written, minutes, but we've always done it 5 days a week. Right. And so that's just an interesting way. I honestly haven't thought about it like that until you just said that. So that's pretty cool.
Well, and there's like this really great analogy, and it's kind of interesting, like, because we just have certain structures in our school that we don't even question because we're just so used to them, right? And there's a story, and I'm going to totally screw it up. It's just kind of like a myth, like a business myth or whatever. And it's basically these 5 monkeys are in a room, and and there's like a banana, and if anyone reaches, they like shock the monkey. And so they replace like one monkey at a time. And then basically they put a banana, but they don't shock anymore. And everyone pulls people down. Eventually the original 5 monkeys are gone. And then they just pull, and I know I'm telling the story horribly. You're understanding what I'm saying? Yeah. But eventually they just keep pulling people. They keep pulling the monkeys back from actually grabbing the banana, but nobody knows why, because nobody was there for the original thing. And I think a lot of times in schools, we do that same thing. Like we do certain things because they're just the default of the school. It's what we've always done, but we don't know how it originated. We don't know the reasoning. Like I saw someone writing about, and I'm sorry, I totally screwed up that story. Hopefully people understand.
I got it.
Yeah, like people talking about tradition. And one of my favorite quotes ever is "Tradition is peer pressure from dead people." And I just think it's not my quote, but I think it's hilarious. And that idea, I'm not against tradition. I tell a lot of stories, obviously not well sometimes, to kind of make my points come to life. And if you look at the practice of storytelling, it is the oldest teaching strategy ever, right? So it's a very traditional practice. and I still use it. I think the way we can tell stories is different. The way we have access to share stories with people around the world is different, but the ultimate practice of storytelling is really powerful. But what I am against is just doing things because we've always done them, right? Like if there's a good practice we've been doing for years that works for kid, I have no issue with it. And I think that's kind of sometimes people see me as the innovation guy. I think I'm against tradition. I'm not against tradition. I'm against bad practice. That's what I have an issue with. And so I think sometimes one of the most innovative things you can do is bring something back that you used to do if you know it can help a kid, right? It's all about that process of how do we find new and better ways to help our students? But some of those better ways are practices that we used years ago.
Yeah. No, I think the monkey story makes perfect sense. And I think too often, honestly, I think too often I love metaphors, so you can't be wrong there with me.
Much better in the book.
read it for yourself. Go buy one. So I do think too often we just continue to do things without question. Like we don't even know, like you said, we don't even understand the origination of it. Why did it ever become that? Why did they pull the monkeys away? Oh, they used to get shocked. Like I didn't even know that, you know, but I think that there's a lot of things like that. And I feel like in 2020, I feel like as educators, at least most of the ones I've visited with on here and on podcast shows have had to innovate out, you know, like be more innovative and definitely try things that they've never tried before. And same with administration too, just looking at things from a totally different view. So I feel like right now we have a great opportunity to take a peek at everything and what are we doing that's just dumb, that doesn't make sense, that maybe could be done differently and more effectively. So I really appreciate all of that. It's so good.
Yeah, and that's I got to highlight this. Janice Carlson talked about doing around the concepts of innovators mindset. That's absolutely awesome. And I think that's the whole premise and why it makes it so powerful is that when I talk about this, I think a lot of people will say this in the sense that like, hey, this is a really great book for our kids, right? For things that we need to embody in our kids. But I don't think you can really get it to understand it with your kids. And, unless as Janice shared, kind of she understood as she read it, she kind of sees herself in that picture. And so part of it is like, we have to look at that too. And, how do we build those concepts when how we plan our curriculum and how we plan our learning, right? And I think that to me it's either for our students or either for the adults. It's really, we have to figure out how do we embody this so we can help our kids, right? The best type of learning is experiencing that in a different way. Most
definitely. Well, George, this has been so incredible. I think everyone is saying all kinds of, they want to hear, Amy wants to hear more about your unit, Janice. So you guys need to connect. That's another thing. Like that's the thing that you were talking about earlier is just connecting. And I feel like that was just so powerful to me because all I knew was my district and I did work with 13 schools, but still I only knew those 13 schools and that's the most I knew. So being able to connect in whichever platform you choose to connect with, it's so nice to be able to share an idea. And then who knows, Amy will probably have a new way to do it from Janice's idea and then brainstorming and getting more ideas. And that's what innovation and that's what collaboration is all about. Like, I think
there's a really great video and it's like Janice, what just happened between Janice and Amy is like the embodiment of this. It's by Derek Sivers. It's called Obvious to You, Amazing to Others. So a lot of times, one of the reasons that I think it's really important to share, and a lot of people have that apprehension to share because they think their idea is not that great, right? Like it's, no one's going to think this is good, but what is in the whole point of the video is like, what is just obvious to you, what you just do to somebody else is going to blow their mind. Right. And will be something that they would have never thought of in that way. And so like, I share my ideas, not because I think they're groundbreaking. I share them because these are things that I do. And if you can take them in any way, modify them, repurpose them for whatever you're doing in your work, I think there's a real power in that. And so I think that's why. And so it's kind of nice to see that actually happen real time in front of us tonight. Talking about this Amy connecting. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So sorry. I was trying to get the video to drop it in here. It started playing. Sorry about that. Yeah. Yes. So I just dropped that video in there. I love that video. And I think you're so right. Mm-hmm. Too often, we just don't think that we think our ideas are just boring. It just seems like So everybody already knows them, but the truth is you put it out there and people don't already know them. And they love it and they take it and try something new with it. And that's kind of like what happened with book snaps. And I really thank you for getting me on Twitter for that. I mean, that's just like a random idea I shot out there, and who knew everybody was going to, all these people around the world were going to figure out ways to use this digital visual representation of learning for all the different subject matters. And yeah, it just became a thing. Who even knew?
What's interesting is that like you started, do you still use Snapchat? You use it quite a bit still?
I still do ish, mostly for book snaps, but yeah.
Like, and if you think about Snapchat, it wasn't made for that, right? And I think that's what's really powerful is that we learn these tools and then we have an understanding of them and then we repurpose them in a way that works for us, right? Twitter's the same way. Like Twitter was not, nobody was saying like, hey, let's actually create something that a bunch of educators could share ideas with. But then, long before I was on, educators started sharing there and started reconnecting and repurposing. And I think that's part of the reason I talk about, like, it's really important to understand the basics, because once you understand the basics, and I make this analogy, and if you're a jazz musician, I apologize, but like the jazz musicians are known for basically like impromptu music, like making music on the fly and just being an amazing improvisation. But the reason they can do that is because they know the instrument and they know how to play it so well. They know the basics of that they get to a point where they can improvise. And so when you look at what you're doing with, Snapchat, things that we do with different technologies, knowing that very well then gives us the opportunity to actually do the improvisation, to create something really unique and different. And so repurposing, and I think it's neat seeing that, because a lot of educators are doing that right now with, some of the stuff that they know and how they're reinventing things in their classroom on the fly to really work for kids in a way that's meaningful to them.
I know, it's so beautiful. I'm really so proud of educators. I'm always proud of educators. I think it's just the most amazing profession in the world. But especially in this past year, I just feel like so many amazing things have come out of that. I know a lot of hardship has come out of it as well, but I'm just truly impressed by the work that you guys are doing out there. So George, thank you for inspiring us. Nicole is really loving that jazz band analogy. I agree.
It's better than my other story.
No, I think we're both fantastic. I do think it's true, though, that foundation is so key with anything that we're learning, because once you have that piece down, then you can interact in unique improv ways and make it more fun and engaging. So thank you, George, for joining us tonight. Thanks for inspiring us. If you've not checked out both of his books, Dave did drop the links over in the comments. We'll have them up above this video as well, or below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you haven't commented and you want to, please do enter some kind of comment over in the comment section so you can be entered to win one of the free books. If you're watching this on the playback, don't forget you are also entered to win if you get it in before 8 a.m. on Friday morning, January 22nd. So thank you, George, for joining us. And please do tell everyone how they can connect with you if they don't already. And definitely sign up for, Dave did put his podcast over in the comment section too. You definitely want to connect with that. And sign up for his email list, because he shares something professional, something personal, and something
profound.
And
the profound thing is always something from somebody else.
I love it. It's perfect.
That's right. I call it, if it was me, I wouldn't call it profound, right?
So. I think it's perfect. You definitely
you can me GeorgeCouros.ca. I actually just followed Janice through her Instagram in there, and I just followed Janice. So like, if I see your Instagram, I'll try to follow you and there as well. So yeah, just GeorgeCouros.ca and G Couros. You can connect with me. Yeah, and those emails, I love doing them. It's like writing journals, to thousands of people, which is kind of neat idea.
Always baby pictures in there, so you definitely want to sign up for it because they're cute.
Amy, make sure you say hi to AJ in your next session. So from me.
Yes, most definitely. So thanks everyone for joining in again tonight. Remember, next Thursday, same place, same time, different guest. And yeah, we're just excited to have you. So thanks, George. Appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for being here tonight. I appreciate you.